Good afternoon. My name is Bill Browning. I'm a partner in Terrapin Bright Green. We are a research and consulting firm based in Washington, D.C. and New York. Today I'm going to speak about a little piece of history of what we're working on, deep history of trying to figure out how to set metrics for a project. So let me start the story. A client of ours came to us with a very large building. This is a building that is essentially the Empire State Building laying on its side. It was built by the Port Authority of New York in the late 20s, early 30s, and it was built as a warehouse building. And into this building came trains and trucks. The trucks were put on elevators and hauled up through the building, and the materials sorted and then taken out through the building. 4 of those elevators existed in the building, 2 still exist. Now, over time, the building's use shifted. It's no longer a warehouse. The building is roughly 1/3 data centers now, and a combination of different office spaces for different clients. It is the biggest single energy user in the state of New York. $53 to $55 million of electricity a year, and the water use is similarly quite astonishing. So our clients came to us, the owners of the building, and asked us, what could we do about this? So we started the process of doing an energy model and putting together the water balance for the building. So here's some of the water usage numbers in the building. Pretty high for a building of that size. But what was perplexing to us was that when we looked at the usage numbers, there was a complete disconnect between the usage numbers and the amount of water coming out of the building. In fact, the amount of water coming out of the building so greatly exceeded the amount of water coming into the building that we had a mystery. So we started doing some research. And in the basement of this building, we find 3 huge sump pumps that appear to have been running for the entire history of the building. And in fact, are pumping approximately 45 million gallons of water a year out of this basement. And the water is clear and cold and really good quality. It looks like a stream. It looks like a stream has been flowing into the basement of this building since it was built and is still there. Now, how did we confirm that? Well, we've been working with Eric Sanderson at the Wildlife Conservation Society. Eric's an ecological systems history specialist who asked a question, what did Manhattan look like in 1609 when Henry Hudson sailed into the bay? And so we spent a number of years developing a project called Mannahatta, where they remapped all of the ancient ecosystems of Manhattan back onto the island. So here's the tip of Manhattan today. Here it is in 1609. Now, if I go onto the Mannahatta website, I can type in my address and see what the ecosystem on my site was. Not just what the reference ecosystem was, but actually what was in that reference ecosystem. The plants, the animals, the geology, the human history. We decided, partially inspired by the work of Mithun and others in Lloyd Crossing and deep ecological history dives by other people that we work with, to ask the question of not only what was on this site, but what was it doing? What were the ecosystem services that this ecology was providing for that site? And so that's what we've mapped. So here you can see on the left the ecosystem services from 1609, the solar flux, the water balance, the biodiversity, the fact that the site was sequestering 3.7 tons of carbon a year. And then we ran those metrics for what the building is doing today in 2011. And as you can see, the numbers are a little different. And so along the way, a little software company bought the building and decided that they'd like to turn it into a campus. And so the question we're investigating with them is, over the 20 years it'll take to completely transform this building and move 12,000 people in this building, can we mimic the ecosystem services that ecosystem was providing on that site? That's our metrics. So it's not asking, wow, can I save 30% of the energy over what ASHRAE standard, what year? It becomes, oh, this was a solar flux on the site. This site was sequestering 3.7 tons of carbon a year. Ah, how do I do that? Oh, here's what the runoff coefficient was. This is the amount of water that was moving through this ecosystem. It makes you to start ask very different questions. So all of a sudden, looking at the evapotranspiration from cooling towers is not as scary because you step back and look and realize that the indigenous ecosystem was putting tons and tons of water into the air, and that was help moderating the climate. And so as we start digging in deeper, we look at albedo and we look at realize that during the winter, this had a very high albedo with the sun shining off the snow. But during the summer months, is actually absorbing a lot of that energy. So what does that tell us for the strategies that we do on this building? So let me show you one piece of where we're mapping all of that right now. This is a water flow diagram. The upper part is what this building could look like, business as usual, continuing existing practice with 12,000 people in that building. 119 million gallons of water a year. You see that 45 million gallons of water still being pumped out of the basement into the sewer. You see 5.1 million gallons of water, of rainwater a year that falls on the building, a gift from the sky that's being thrown down the drain as well. So instead, let's use those gifts and let's rethink it. Let's only use the potable water for those things that we need, cooking and drinking. Recycle water in the building and use these other water streams. So what would that mean? Over the next 20 years, what it may mean is that instead of buying 119 million gallons of water a year, we then go to 26 million gallons of water a year. And rather than putting 143 million gallons of water a year down that basement into the storm drain, we reduce that to 39. And so now we have numbers that look much, much closer to what the ecosystem on that site was capable of doing. So this for us has been a new way of thinking about, and we're involved in several other sites where we're asking this question. Because when we look at this, this is very, very specific. Could we go back, please? If we look at what the ecosystem was doing in 1609 on this site, could we take the slide back, please? We would have those numbers be very, very different from they are today. But also, if we run those numbers for just a few blocks north of this site, we would be in red maple swamp and have totally different numbers. Or if we went further north and east in Manhattan into Harlem, we would have salt marshes. Or if we went 2 blocks west from this site, we'd be on the shore and into the Hudson. So what you discover as you do this sort of thinking is that your standards and your way of thinking about what are you trying to achieve becomes very, very site-specific. It's a very interesting way to think about metrics and to localize your system. Could we take the slide back, please? Thank you. So, are there any questions? Great. Thank you very much.